Welcome to another edition of Radio Influencers, a podcast series we're doing for Radio Update. I'm your host, Andy Meadows. Hope everyone had a great 4th of July weekend. Obviously, all of us were heartbroken to see the footage of the tragic events taking place in my old hometown of Kerrville, Texas. And that's what I want to talk about today. It kind of relates to the topic I wanted to discuss, radio's severe weather coverage. But first, on a lighter note, I wanted to look at the results from our Weekly Wire poll questions. We asked, how will you adjust your programming for the upcoming 4th of July weekend? And I had a pretty good response to this one. 4th of July imaging was by far the number one answer, followed by personal messages from the on-air talent and adding a few patriotic songs. I kind of thought that would be the number one answer. I guess it makes sense that everybody adjusts their imaging for 4th of July. By the way, we're recording this on Monday this week, and one thing I do every Monday is look at how music is doing across formats based on all the data we pull and look at. And when I got to country today, I noticed that the number one streamed country song over the last few days was Toby Keith's Courtesy of the Red, White, and Blue. So that's a great indicator how many country stations adjust their programming for 4th of July weekend, or how many stations should, because that's what people were listening to on their own. That was mainly streaming and in sales data. So we are right to adjust our programming for 4th of July weekend because that's what people want. If you have any questions after watching or listening, email them to me at andy@radiostationconsultant.com or editor@radioupdate.com, and I'll answer them to the best of my ability. Wanted to keep this one short this week. I know we're all playing catch up from the 4th of July weekend, but wanted to talk real quickly about what happened in the Hill Country over the weekend, because as some of you may know, if you watch this, I probably talked about it before, but I grew up in the Texas Hill Country. My family owned a radio station, AM/FM station in Junction, Texas. That's where I originally grew up. And then in high school, my dad started running an AM and FM in Kerrville, Texas. So that's where I went to. That's where I graduated from high school, started high school in Junction, but graduated high school from Kerrville, Texas, which was, as many of you know, as everyone knows, the city that really caught the brunt of the flooding over the weekend, and such a horrible event that happened at Camp Mystic. The guy that ran that place, Mr. Eastland, was the father of a kid that I went to high school with, and my little brother went to high school with another one of his sons. Great man. I did not know him well. My parents had gone to dinner with him once or twice. They knew him. They spoke very highly of him. Great guy, and sounds like he passed away trying to save some campers there, and that was. Obviously, it's all terrible, all tragic. Growing up there, one thing you know is that it's that area, the Hill Country, is prone to flooding. I now live in Tornado Alley, where the most dangerous thing up here in North Texas is obviously the threat of tornadoes. But in the Hill Country, it's flooding. It's an area that is prone to flood. But this was a unprecedented storm that no one could see coming. I know everyone is weighing in on what could have been done better, and there are obviously people will get to the bottom. People way smarter than me will get to the bottom of what could have been done better and what we can improve for next time as far as alerts and notices go. But the way the rain hovered over the two forks of the Guadalupe River, the two forks that feed the Guadalupe River, right there by those camps. And by the way, there are 18 camps out there. So a lot of young people right close to the shores of the Guadalupe that were in harm's way in the middle of the night. Cannot imagine, as someone who has two daughters, I can't imagine what it was like for those kids and what it's like for the parents of those kids when all that happened and they get the word that your child is missing. And obviously, tragically, I think now it's upwards of 80 plus people, and the tally keeps going up that have passed away, and many of those were children. So such a horrible event to see, and we we had friends that had a daughter that was at wasn't at Mystic. She was at Waldemar. I think I'm saying that correctly, but she got out safe. I believe everybody at her camp ended up being safe, but she said it sounded like a hurricane hitting them, and then she said her and the fellow campers all knew something was wrong because they could hear the helicopters, and this was the middle of the night, so I can't imagine how scary that was. And some of the audio clips I've heard from some of the news has caught of some of the survivors, the campers that were out there at all these camps are just hard to hear. It just breaks your heart hearing this. And one of the things that we all do in radio is we cover severe weather. So we all get used to the terms and the difference between a watch and a warning. And me growing up in radio in the hill country, we knew flash flood warnings were a serious thing, but we also they happen so often it's hard to react as quickly as you should, because you get them so often. It kind of, it's middle of the night, you see it on your phone, and you think, we get these all the time, and it's never that bad. And obviously this was one of those times where worst case scenario, where the rain hit so heavily and the volume of it feeding that river. But one thing that I think about from a radio standpoint that I wish our industry could get back to doing a little better job with how much everything's been cut at the local level. It's hard to deliver the severe weather coverage that we used to do back in the day. But if we could get back to some semblance of that, as short-staffed as we are, and maybe it's using technology. Obviously, we all have the EAS hooked up where it automatically takes over immediately for the warnings, and depending on our area, in an area like the Hill Country, flash flood warnings would automatically, your EAS would be set up to automatically take over for it. But it's, if we could do a better job training our staff, and I'm not in any way saying that this did not happen at the local level. I'm just saying broader, if we could all get a little bit better at training our personnel on, anybody that cracks the mic should know how to handle severe weather coverage, know when to take over immediately, know when, because I know a lot of people who are probably new in the industry are afraid to ever take over, stop a song halfway through or cut in the middle of something when they're, and know when can I go to a live news feed, when can I, when and should I do all of these things, and I feel like we could do a little bit better job as program directors and as guys like me, consultants who do coach talent, training people on exactly what to do in severe weather and localize it for that region, and what the threats to life are in that area. Because anybody who cracks a mic on behalf of a station has to know how to handle emergency situations, and weather obviously is one of the big ones. And the other thing is redundancy through the audio chain. Radio stations we're only good to serve the public if we're actually on the air, and when severe weather hits, it's much harder to be on the air if we don't have redundancy and throughout our audio chain, because anything can take out any part of it, and the more points of failure that we have, the more likely we're not going to be on the air when people need us most. So everything we can do within our budgets to have a solid audio chain all the way through, and as much redundancy as possible across those audio chains, the best. I wrote an article about radio's severe weather advantage that's up on my website, radiostationconsultant.com. You can get it on radioupdate.com as well, but where I talk about this is a real area for radio to shine, the severe weather, because the when you think about it, I mean, most of us don't have battery-powered televisions in our home, but many of us do have a battery-powered radio. So when the power goes out, if you've got that battery-powered emergency radio, which everybody should have, and this is a perfect example of why those can be helpful, then radio is still that lifeline to people getting that information across through the AAS alerts, and when we're manned or when we can get somebody up to the station immediately, we can be there for it. I was talking to a friend of mine who's a program director for a country station in a major market. After I put that article out, he actually called me and said he appreciated that article because it reminded him of a situation that had happened. And this kind of brings back my point about how folks that are new in the industry may not realize that the important role radio plays in severe weather. But he had some severe weather had hit their area, and it was severe weather that they saw coming days before. And so he did the right thing and offered to get hotel rooms for everyone on the morning show crew, and because they knew that there was a good chance everybody wouldn't be able to make it to the station because of this severe weather. And nobody took him up on it. Everyone said, we'll be fine getting in. And the weather did end up being worse than predicted. And the two people on the morning team, the people that have been in radio for a long time, made their way up to the station, fought through the weather. It took them 2 hours to get to work, or an hour or two to get to work, much longer than normal. But they made it there, and they were able to deliver the live coverage. And two of the people that were new to radio were like, hey, they said shelter in place. They said, don't, why would we drive into work? And that's sadly, that's my friend's point, was that's what you signed up for. And I agree. I mean, it's not fun to be the guy that drives through the weather to get to the radio station to provide that coverage, but just like it's not fun to be out there in the search crews and being a first responder. And I'm by no means comparing what we do in radio, talking into a microphone, to the people who put their lives on the line, but it is dangerous. I mean, I've been in a radio station broadcasting, talking about a tornado, and as I'm reading the description, I realize, the radio station I'm in right now is actually, it could potentially be in the path of this, and you have to make that call of like, do I stay on the air or do I leave? And another time I was talking about a storm, and it was headed for my house, and luckily the wife, now girlfriend at the time, wasn't there. She was at work, but the dog was there, so you have to check on that. But it's just it's not a fun part of the job, but it is absolutely part of the job that I wish we would all get back to treating it that way, because it's an important function of our industry. And it can feel at times like, we're not first responders, we're not doctors, we're not somebody who really saves lives, but we actually, we do save lives with, and this is one example. When severe weather hits, when you can tell somebody about a tornado that's touched the ground, 30 seconds can be the difference between life and death. And as we saw in this flooding that happens, I think one thing I read, and don't quote me on this in case it's not accurate, but one thing I read is that it was going up 6 inches every minute at one point. And so that's part of the reason this was so deadly, is it happened so quickly, so much quicker than anybody could have anticipated. So you see the floodwater rising, and you think, well, we've got time, and then it just happened so much faster than you can imagine. So even in flash flooding situations, radio can be a very helpful tool to people, but only if we're on the air and we have people in the studio that know how to handle severe weather coverage well. So if you have any thoughts on this or any other hot radio topic, I'd love to hear from you on it. Just email them to me at Andy@radiostationconsultant.com or editor@radioupdate.com. and I will answer them. And if you have if you want to write an article and submit it to Radio Update about this or anything else, please do that as well. Be happy to publish that. And we'll be back next week with another episode of Radio Influencers, and I promise you it will be a happier and more uplifting episode. Thank you so much. Radio Influencers is a Radio Update production. New episodes are released on Tuesdays at 10 a.m. Eastern.